welcome to our final session of Marketing Showcase Online for June. Thank you so much for tuning in and sticking around with us for the last of what was 2 brilliant days of marketing madness, I like to call it. So we've had some brilliant speakers so far. Actually, the one that's joining us in this Q&A hosted our last webinar of day 1. It's Will Roberts, who is the Managing Director and founder at Webbox, and he was doing a brilliant talk. I've just edited it, actually, it's so good, on the top 20 tips your website must have for 2022. So if any of you saw that, I'm sure you agree with me, it was a great talk. If you didn't, don't worry, we're going to be focusing on websites in this Q&A session as well. So for any of you that saw yesterday's talk and have got any questions about that, please whack them in the Q&A box now. So if you can go down to the bottom of Zoom, you'll see that there's a couple of options at the bottom, the Q&A included. The way I'd like to kick this off is simply by asking your questions to Will. So any questions about websites, from conversions, design, hosting, trends, anything that you want to ask about your website and get some advice on it, please put it in the Q&A box and I'll make sure that Will is on hand to ask those. Cool. I can see a few people using that. Separate to that, there's a chat. If you want to be talking to me, or if you want to talk to any of your other attendees, let them know you're here. Please use the chat. Get nice and busy in there. I love to see a busy chat in these sessions. So just before I invite our speaker on, the last important part is the way I use the Q&A is there's a little thumb button there where you can upvote the best questions. So make sure you have the Q&A box open. You can see what questions are being asked, and pop a thumbs up on any of those that you like, as I will tend to look at the top one and go on that as that's the next question to ask. So try and ask some good questions and get them to the top. So without further ado, let's invite our speaker, Will, to the stage. Will, how are you? Welcome back.
Hi, Ash, and hi everyone. How you doing?
Yeah, really good, thank you. 2 webinars in 2 days. Actually, for you, it's 3, right?
That's it. Yeah, I did another one. So yeah, 3 in 2 days. It's been a busy couple of days.
Good. Well, thank you very much for joining us again. And like I said, I really loved yesterday's session. So it'd be good to cover some questions on that and wider topic of websites too. So let's dive right in, Will. So we've already got a question that's gone in the chat that's talking about the best methods to improve your position on search engine listings, both pay-per-click and general SEO, from the wording on the website. So can you give us a little bit of advice on how to structure a site and what you should be putting on your site to be top of Google?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, thanks for the question. From an SEO point of view, I'll say that's not my specialist subject, but pay-per-click is. So I'll keep the SEO part general. So from an SEO point of view, look, content we really think is king. So the content of your website is going to drive a lot of SEO power. So really working with a copywriter who understands SEO is going to be really key. Making sure that you've got the basics in place, such as your heading structures and metadata, all the way through to looking at competitors, seeing how many words and the keyword density that they have on their website, and making sure that you're on par or better than those competitors. The other thing I'd say is Google's big ranking factor at the moment is page speed. It is a huge factor. And actually, if you're not in the kind of green realm when you score your website using their tool, then I would kind of flag that as a priority for you. So making sure your website loads really quickly is going to significantly help from an SEO point of view. Paid ads, yeah, that's definitely a subject which I'm really passionate about and something we've done a lot of. So from a paid ads perspective, I guess I would probably kind of step back initially and say, what's the kind of primary purpose of the campaign that you're trying to run? But if I kind of try and answer this more generically, I guess if you're looking for direct conversions from a paid ads campaign, then you need to be on channels which attract active buyers. So that means people who are actively searching for your products or services. So i.e. Google or Bing. Whereas if you're looking for more brand awareness, or you're looking for people who might not know about your products and services but might be interested in them, then you need to look at passive channels such as Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, where someone hasn't necessarily searched for you, but they do come across you there. So there's a number of things there. If you want to kind of add into the chat a bit, a bit more information about your purpose for a paid ads campaign, I'm more than happy then to get into the nitty gritty. But great question to kick us off.
Great, thanks, Will. No, good answer to kick us off as well. So just whilst I ask this next question, I'm going to launch a poll for people to engage with, and it'd be interesting to see the results of this. Might prompt some more questions as well. What are the biggest challenges for our audience in terms of websites at the moment? Is it defining requirements when building a website? Is it your conversion rate of the website, choosing the right CMS, reaching a new audience, or increasing inquiries, leads, and sales? So if you can just have that going in the background whilst you're thinking about some more questions, I'll ask Will this next one and we'll come back to that poll straight afterwards. So the next one on my list is from Ryan, and he's asked a really good one about when building a website, how would you recommend creating that website? Would you use code or use WordPress? And if you use WordPress, what theme would you use? Divi or something else?
Okay, thanks, Ryan. So look, for me, a website nowadays in 2021 has to be CMS driven. And the reason for that is because, most clients that we work with want to be in the driving seat as to the content on their website. They want the ability to update that as frequently as they want to, spin up new landing pages, etc., without having to come back to an agency all the time for those day-to-day tasks. So for me, it definitely has to be CMS driven over just plain vanilla code. In terms of the particular CMS, you've mentioned WordPress, which obviously is one of the biggest CMSs in the world and one that we often recommend. But I would say that it's best to have an agnostic approach to choosing the right CMS. So, don't just choose WordPress or Magento or OpenCart or something else on the market just because you've heard the name. It's best to do your own research or work with an agency to look at the pros and cons of a number of different CMSs that, might be suitable for you. If I kind of mention things like WordPress and Shopify, you've probably heard of them. But if I mentioned Prismic and Zulu, you might not have heard of them. So there are thousands of different CMSs out there, and it's really good to choose the right one for your business and for your long-term objectives.
Yeah, it'd be great. Ryan, if you are in that position, I'm sure Will will be more than happy to further that conversation and talk to you about CMSs and where you might be able to go. So hopefully you two can get in touch afterwards. Okay, keep those questions coming in. We've got one more in the chat live, but I've got a couple that have been asked in advance. So we've got plenty to go on, but if you've got any more questions, I'll tell you what, actually, this will prompt something. So I'm just going to end that poll and share the results with Will and you guys that are watching at home. It seems that the number one thing is predictably increasing inquiries, leads, and sales. Will, is that normally when a client comes to you, is that normally what they're looking for from their website?
Yeah, a lot of people say, look, we've done X, Y, and Z, but we're now looking to take this up to the next level. And we love working with ambitious businesses and organizations who want to, go to the next level. Now, it's a struggle of every business that you want to increase inquiries, leads, or sales, right? Everyone's got the same problem. Everyone is trying to overcome this together. Now, there's a few things I mentioned in yesterday's webinar, which I think is kind of pertinent. So the first thing is we're all trying to increase the number of inquiries that we get. But we're fighting against the tide at the moment because things like the way that cookies are working and people's privacy settings is just making it more difficult to get in front of new audiences using paid ads. So it is a little bit of a challenge in time. So if this is your challenge at the moment, just rest assured that other people are having the exact same challenge. But what I would say is there are still many channels and many ways and tactics in order to get in front of those new audiences, but you just have to adopt a different way of doing it. At the moment, our advice is to focus on gaining first-party data yourself. So what does that mean in practice? In practice, that means rather than relying on audience pools provided to you from the likes of Google and Facebook to put your ads in front of them, it means generating your own inquiries through maybe form fill ads on Facebook. And then once you've got that data, you can then kind of do other things with it, such as retargeting. So owning that data or kind of being the first party holder of that data is becoming more and more important. The other thing as well is I think we all need to kind of maybe step back, because sometimes we just get into the kind of hamster wheel and we keep doing what we're doing. And sometimes we just need to step back and just say, right, is our proposition right? What are our competitors doing at the moment? Have they pivoted potentially? And in turn, do we need to? And looking at, I guess, what we call CRO, conversion rate optimization, and actually looking at whether there's improvements that could be made to your website to help increase the inquiries, leads, and sales. So this is a hot topic at the moment, one which is going to have a different response depending on your specific business. So look, if you've answered that as your kind of poll choice and you want to put in a specific question into the kind of Q&A, feel free to do that. Tell me a little bit about your business specifically, what you're trying to achieve, what your objectives are, and what your struggles are. And I'll try and answer that particular scenario in a bit more detail.
That was a lovely segue, Will. You can take my role of doing that. I may as well not be here if you're going to do it like that. It's brilliant. I can put my feet up and have a coffee. Okay, and look, and here come the questions. You've got a knack for it. You've got a knack for it. I wanted to pull across to some of the content that was covered yesterday. Now, for those that are watching that didn't see yesterday's talk, it was recorded, so this will make sense in time. And you spoke a little bit about cookie-based cookie-based tracking and the changes that we're going to see over the next maybe 12 months. If you can talk about those changes, one of the questions that came in was, because you were talking about server-based cookies rather than, user-based cookies, or you probably describe that better than me. What happens if people clear their cookies was the actual question. But I'd like to know, what is this cookie thing that's going on and the changes that are happening, and how should we build our websites to deal with that?
Yeah. So, cookies have got a bit of a bad rep in the industry and with users, because people think, oh gosh, I'm going to get tracked. The reality is, if we didn't have cookies, we would all see very generic adverts and content, and it wouldn't be relevant to us. So actually, we need to kind of educate people that, the use of cookies is actually a positive thing. Now, first and foremost, I guess the question came in off the back of a piece of content I delivered yesterday, all about how you can serve dynamic content to your users based on kind of their behavior or where they've come from. So to put that into real terms, maybe they've come to your website through a particular paid ad, and we show them specific content, or maybe they've done a particular behavior on the website and we adjust to the content of the website to that particular user. And I gave an example of how the Apple website does that. Now, all of those are really important, but yes, they will rely upon cookies. Now that's changing at the moment. When we place a cookie on a user's device, we do it on their local computer or mobile device, and that's kind of done through the browser. Not to get too technical, but that now needs to shift because we need to shift more to server-side cookie tracking. And really, all I'd say on that point, without getting into the nitty-gritty, is you'll just need to speak to your web developer about that, because there are technical things which they'll need to resolve on the website. But at a high level, you will need to do that as soon as possible, because the way that cookies are being used is changing, and the prediction for 2022 is that actually we'll move to a cookie-less cookie-less world, I guess.
Fine. Well, any world without cookies is a bad world for me, but I just mean the kind of chocolate digestive style.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Such a bad website joke there. Such a bad website joke. But poor on my part. Okay, moving back to today's Q&A. So Amy's asked in the chat. Amy, welcome back. She's been on a couple of our webinars today, so thanks for joining us. She's talking about FAQ pages. Are they essential, or are they important, or in fact, are they not important? They provide training courses, so there's a lot of information around each course, but we do get questions that could form a more general FAQ page, but our team are not so keen. So talk to me about frequently asked question pages.
Yeah, Amy, really good question. I think from a content perspective, it's really good to have them, because obviously kind of the user can find out more information without picking up the phone or inquiring. But coming back to that challenge which everyone's facing in terms of generating inquiries. Sometimes people put so much information on their website that actually someone doesn't need to inquire because they've read enough and made a decision themselves. So there is a balance, because you don't want to give, or should I say, you don't want to show your hand, about everything you offer. Because really the opportunity to have an inquiry come in or a phone call is beneficial, because you'll build a relationship much quicker with that potential client. The other kind of top tip here is with FAQs, these are really simple to wrap with structured markup data and then list your FAQs within the people also ask box of Google. So I appreciate I've just gone through that really quickly. So let me just kind of, explain that a bit more. When you type into Google something like, let me think of something. So where can I find the best training courses? Okay. At the top of the page, you will see a box and it says people also asked. Okay. And there will be similar questions at the top. And they are snippets from lots of third-party websites which Google pull together and put into that box. And as you start reading through those 5 which initially show, more load. Now, if you on your website were to wrap your FAQs in this particular structured markup data, which is just little bits of code, you've got a very good chance of indexing those FAQs within Google searches. So it's another way for you to get your website into Google and shown in that people also ask box.
I love it as well, because I know as a user, I'm pretty much, my search behavior now is asking that question, which I don't know whether there's stats, but it seems that every time I go to Google now, I'm asking a question. But then I'm just moving around my search by using those other questions that people have asked and just keep going and going and going into a bit of a rabbit hole. So that's brilliant advice. Really, really good. Moving on to our next question. It's from Rhiannon, talking about backlinks. So what's the best way to get backlinks? I've been trying to recreate links that our competitors use, but have no idea how they got their links on the majority of the websites. Thank you.
Okay, Rhiannon, great question. I'm going to be brutally transparent with you, which is one of our values. Backlinks is not something I know a heck of a lot on, okay? So what I'd say is the route you're going down in terms of looking at competitors and then trying to replicate what they're doing is the right route, and to do that organically. But you'll find out that it's very, very time consuming. So if I were you, I would try and find someone who specializes in backlink creation, being very careful not to, find people who do it in bulk and spammy links, who do it, you want to find someone who does it ethically, and then kind of partner with them to maybe help you find the right backlinks. But I'm really sorry, it's not an area of my expertise.
Fine, Will. You can't be an expert on everything. I mean, I am, obviously, but no, I understand. No, I'm joking. Yeah. Again, going back to yesterday's webinar, you were talking about, and this was really interesting for me, one of the parts of it was motion-based design. But also another part of that talk was talking about page speed. Now, increasing the functionality on your website, I know, tends to slow it down. And there were a couple of questions that came in off the back from Jenny and also Lee, who were saying, how do you manage that? How do you start ramping up, building beautiful websites that are adding functionality after functionality, feature after feature, but keeping that page speed super, super quick?
Joe, when the question came in yesterday, it's a very, very good question, because there is a balance. So the more motion UI design that you put into your website, the more kind of animation you put in, the more scrollers and large imagery and video that we always recommend, the more of that you put in, it's going to have a negative effect on page speed. Now, there is a balance, because, if you want 100% page speed score, you could just have a white background and black text, okay, as your website, and you'd probably score very highly. But look, no user wants to look at a website that is literally just black and white. Okay, so there has to be design and styling and animations applied to a website, because that helps with user experience and your positioning and everything else. So there has to be a balance. So look, my advice on this is put animations and motion design in place where it's going to add value. If you're putting it in place because it just looks pretty, or because your competitor does it, or because you just think that button should animate and wiggle and hover and everything else, don't do it. There's just no need. But if you're putting motion design in place for a purpose to aid the user experience and also sometimes to aid accessibility, then I would say it's worth compromising slightly on the page speed in order to get that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Will. And moving on, still in keeping with motion-based design and these new sort of animated features that we can add to our websites, another one of your points was about accessibility. And how does the website designer sort of balance that, you know, the mix between, okay, I've got users that want to see these beautiful images, but I've got some that simply hate them. They won't be able to see them. They're colorblind. They're struggling with their site. How do you balance that? And is there any sort of software out there that can kind of handle that? Or
yeah, so on yesterday's webinar, I showed a screenshot of an accessibility pop-up. Now, this might appear when someone who looks for accessibility options clicks on a button on a website, and it pops up and it gives them various options, such as increasing or decreasing font size and changing the background color and changing font color and things like that. And it helps those who are visually and hearing impaired, view your website, in a more comfortable way. There are tools such as UAccess that plug into your website and facilitate those features for you, but you can also get plugins and your developer can write something bespoke for you as well to achieve that. Now, there is a balance, because with Motion UI design, it's really nice. It's elegant, but of course, for some people who might be visually impaired, it might just be distracting. So I would suggest that one of the settings within your accessibility pop-up should be actually to reduce animation. If you've got a very animated website and you've got things coming in as you scroll down the page, and my example yesterday had a line drawn down the page as you scroll down, then maybe you need an option just to kind of turn that off, that some users might opt for. And then you could track that. If a large proportion of people are turning it off, then you could say, well, actually, maybe we've gone overboard here. But if it's a very small percentage, maybe 1%, then we could say, actually, maybe that's a useful feature for those who are using accessibility tools. The only final thing I'd say on that is, when it comes to this motion design on things like buttons, the example I showed yesterday is where you were going to, I think it was going to be a download of a PDF. So the button says download initially. You click on it, it spins to show that the file is downloading. And then once it's downloaded, you click open. Now that's helpful for most users because they see the progress and they get some response from the website. And if that's implemented correctly by your developer, there's no reason why the font size in the button can't also be adjusted and made bigger if necessary. There's no reason why the color of the button and the background of the button could not be changed again through the accessibility settings. So actually there's ways to make those motion design elements still accessible to those who need to adjust the accessibility settings on your website.
Cool. Well, great answer. Thanks very much. Just before we sort of reach, we've got a bit of time left, but I want to launch this now. The guys at Webbox and Marketing Showcase, we're launching a poll here about when you guys are planning on building a new website. We're interested to know. So whilst that's going in the background, let's move on to another question. You should have seen that pop up by now, by the way. Anna's asked here, I've just seen it come in, any software you know of or tools for AR that you mentioned yesterday, They work in a school and things are going more online. We rent the space and a tour would go really nicely around the school. That is a genuine use for it. Now, I watched that, and I'll be dead honest with you, Will, because that's one of your values, is I wrote down gimmick. And I could just see people trying to push AR into their websites and be like, it's available, I'm going to do it, but for no reason. So I think Anna's got a really good example there. And how do you go about building AR into your website? And is there general software out there that can just do it for you?
Yeah, so there is off-the-shelf software that you can kind of look into, and that will plug into a website. But Anna, I would actually suggest something slightly different. So, we work quite a lot actually in the education. So this is something where I've seen this time and time again, where you're looking to do a tour. And obviously, as things move online, I would suggest that you implement a virtual tour. And the way that I would do that is, rather than maybe having a videographer into the school to, video around the school, etc., I would probably use the Google trusted photographers who go around doing those Google 360-degree maps. Now, what that actually allows you to do as a user is find a school on Google Maps. You can then actually walk around the school as if you're walking down the street on Google Maps, and you can literally just drag your way through the school corridors, and you can kind of pivot and see everything. So it's a whole 360-degree virtual experience of walking around the school. Now, you can also have a bit of fun with that because, for example, as the camera's panned here, taking a shot, you could have particular people within that shot. And as the camera kind of pivots around, you can have the same people in the shot doing a pose or doing something funny or having a different hat on or something. And I've seen that done really creatively, especially within like a classroom setting. So I can give you some examples, but there's really cool ways to do that. So I would say actually in this instance, I probably wouldn't use AR. I'd use a Google 360 walkthrough, which would integrate into Google Maps.
It's brilliant. Really, really good examples. I love that, Will. Thank you. Another question that's gone in, I've had to read it a couple of times, so please forgive me if I do this one wrong. Caveat this, I am borderline dyslexic, so sometimes when I read this, it takes me a few times. But does the accessibility to tools like WordPress create less of a requirement for a web developer within a business?
Okay, so the way, if I misinterpret this, please say, but the way I look at that is there are plugins that you can use on WordPress to improve the accessibility of your website. They're out of the box, you could just plumb them in, and in theory, they should work out of the box. So that does create less of a requirement for a web developer, yes. The caveat to that is, if you're using a particularly complex theme or even a bespoke theme within WordPress, then the accessibility plugin might not necessarily adjust particular elements within that theme. So for example, if you had a really bespoke and complex header area that's been written for you custom, it might be that the accessibility plugin doesn't adjust the colors and font sizes and other things of that header section because it can't read it. So you might just want to kind of maybe try one or two off-the-shelf plugins and see if they work for you. If they do, great. If they don't, then you might need some involvement from your web developer to help you achieve full accessibility across your website.
We use WordPress for our website, and we have several plugins for different things just based on what our expertise are and what we need help on. And what I've found through personal experience is I add one plugin, all of a sudden plugin B doesn't work. I add plugin C, plugin A doesn't work, and they all start to conflict with one another. And for something like accessibility, that's almost where it's pretty important. And if it doesn't work, you're gonna make a few enemies out there. I think that could be something to consider.
Yeah, so we're working with a client at the moment that has got a problem with their WordPress site in that they can't maintain it and update it because it's just been butchered over the years. And this is a story which we hear time and time again. When we actually looked under the hood, they were using, I think, 50 to 60 different plugins, which was like, that's crazy.
Oh, well, I'm slowly sort of going to hover off the screen here as I say how many how many plugins I've got. I'd hate for you to have a look under the hood of my website.
Well, it's let's put it this way: it's not recommended.
Very soft, nice.
Yeah. Just on the basis that the more you use, the more difficult it comes to maintain, the more conflict you're going to get, and really at that point, you need to be looking at maybe different solutions and maybe more bespoke solutions than what WordPress can do just out of the box. So yeah, it kind of blew my mind, because not that that's the greatest number I've ever seen, but it's a very large number of plugins to be using on a WordPress site.
For sure. Look, that is all we have time for, Will. That's 31 minutes. You've got lots of people saying thank you. Look, I've started doing this and I really like doing it because I think it shows the appreciation for you joining us as a speaker. If everyone could just put a little round of applause or thumbs up or thanks to Will for taking the time to not only run us through this Q&A today, but obviously present 20 top tips for 2022 websites as well, which if you didn't see, I'll send out via recordings probably tomorrow, maybe the next day. Will, if you've got the chat open, thanks for flooding in. So that's always nice for you to see.
Yeah, no, thank you everyone for listening. If you do have any other questions, feel free just to ping them my way. I'm more than happy just to kind of give you an answer. No obligation, just pop me an email. It's just will@webboxdigital.co.uk, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions which you think of after this session.
Digital.co.uk. Right, it's in the chat, is Will's email. I'm going to leave this open for a couple of minutes. So if anyone does want to put a Q&A in the chat, if something's come up and it's too late, put it in the Q&A. I'll leave it open and I'll pass those over to Will later on. I did that with the last session. It works okay. So if anyone has any questions, still use the Q&A box or email Will. That's all we've got time for. And that is the end of Marketing Showcase Online for June. So thank you so much for everyone joining us. Really, really appreciate you getting in touch. To be honest with you, as for the online format, I'm not quite sure where it leaves us. We've obviously got live events taking place again, hopefully with a bit of luck, starting again in September. And we're looking at trying to kind of merge the two together, but there's a lot to decide on. So if you've joined us at any of the last, 107, 108 webinars, literally from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's meant a lot to us. So have a great rest of your day, guys, and I'll see you soon.